No, I'm straight up. Twitter right now has the right to ban any protected class. Twitter can say, we're not going to allow any Asians on the platform. Boop, and they can't stop.
My reading of that so I know that there's court testimony that you tweeted, which I reviewed, and I reviewed the context of that and some legal opinions. That's not the opinion that I came away with. The opinion that I came away with is not, and let me see if I'll distinguish it the way I understand it, and then you tell me if I'm maybe misunderstanding it. My reading of the test, and this may be getting sort of too in the weeds for some in the audience, maybe not, but we'll give it a shot. My understanding of the testimony that you linked me to is that it is not that Twitter could say as a policy, we do not allow Asian people on our platform. I've seen no serious legal opinion that that is something Twitter would be able to do. My understanding is that if there is a type of speech that Twitter identifies that would disproportionately wrap up Asian people, that is something Twitter is asserting would be legally acceptable.
In terms of in terms of that particular testimony,
yeah.
But as we know from the motherboard piece, at least one employee said they use an algorithm to sweep up to target ISIS, which actually sweeps up innocent Muslims.
But that's exactly the point I'm making, which is that's not them. Twitter is not saying as a policy we don't allow Muslims. They're saying we have a policy to target ISIS, which is mostly made up of Muslims, which will trigger some false positives.
So I guess the challenge then is, are we enforcing rules at a policy level or an individual level?
I agree. We completely. That's a key question. But I don't want anybody to think that what you're asserting, unless it is what you're asserting, is that. Yeah, go ahead.
So let's dig into it.
Yeah.
What is the Twitter public accommodation? That you can say something and it will appear in reverse chronological order to those who subscribe to it.
Right.
Right. That is the public accommodation. According to civil rights law, you cannot restrict a public accommodation based on protected characteristics. If someone quotes a verse from the Quran, Twitter can remove that.
Okay, you're saying at the individual level or through an algorithm that is meant to identify ISIS members?
Twitter, a Twitter employee has the First Amendment and Section 230 right to say anything pertaining to this protected class we can remove, because Twitter is a speech platform.
But that's the thing. So here's where I think, and I don't know if we're talking past each other or if we actually disagree about what the policy is, or if we're just misunderstanding what the policy is. What I'm saying is I have seen no evidence, nor any legal opinion, nor have I seen Twitter say that they believe they could have a policy that says, we do not allow, for example, Jews on Twitter, and that would be legal.
So let's try and bring it to the real world.
Okay.
The way you're describing it would be that McDonald's says, no, Jews are allowed in the store. We just refuse to sell them cheeseburgers. You see what I mean? The point of Twitter.
I'm not sure that that's the right analogy.
So let's check it out. Twitter is a platform where you can express your thoughts.
Okay.
You can go on and you can. Otherwise, what are you really doing? Nothing. Like that's all Twitter does. Twitter has a First Amendment and Section 230 argument where they say, whatever it is you say, we can remove it for any reason. And the judge asked, are you saying you could remove someone even if it would be discriminatory based on religion or gender? And the response from Twitter's lawyers was yes.
Right. So I think you're misunderstanding that testimony. And there's a page that follows it or a sequence that follows it that I think is very illuminating. I'll just give an example, and maybe the analogy will allow us to move forward on this. Imagine that Twitter wants to, let's just take the one from we were talking about earlier. Twitter wants to enforce a ban on anti-Semitic content. Okay, let's imagine that that's something Twitter decided they were going to do. Anti-Semitic content on Twitter is not equally balanced between men and women. We don't even have to argue about what the split is, but we would just agree it's very unlikely that it's 50-50 or 50.3 and 49.7, the way that men and women exist in society. Anti-Semitic content on Twitter is not evenly balanced between right-wingers and left-wingers. An ADL study says 71% is right-wing. Number doesn't matter. You might disagree with the number, but let's just imagine it's not evenly distributed. What Twitter is asserting is, if indeed 71% of anti-Semitic content comes from right-wingers, we are going to be disproportionately removing the content of and banning conservatives or right-wingers or whatever term you want to use. Twitter is not saying we would legally be able to say No, imagine that they're white conservatives, just for our argument, because we got to add a protected class. Twitter's not saying if we wanted to ban all white conservatives from Twitter, we would be allowed to do it. That would violate a very specific non-discrimination law. What they are saying is that if the practice of removing anti-Semitic content disproportionately targets people who happen to be white, as long as we're not removing people for being white, that is legal. And I agree that that's legal.
That's a really interesting, that's a good point. That's a really good point. What we're seeing now, I think, with the digital space is that we've actually got a distinction between people as thoughts and the thoughts related to certain characteristics and identities and the individual themselves and their identity. Because I think by your explanation, and again, I think it's a good point, Twitter couldn't actually ban someone for being gay because they're banning the speech specifically, right?
No,
like
well,
if someone,
well,
so I'll put it this way.
Yeah.
If someone was gay and made a post talking about the things they do as a gay person, Twitter could ban them, right?
Well, I mean, I guess if they had a policy that said what, that you can't talk about gay things, I don't know.
No, I mean, I'm saying like from a legal standpoint, based on the First Amendment argument that Twitter's under no obligation to support the speech of anyone else, right? So,
I guess so.
if you're saying so let's Twitter does have a policy that bans hate speech, which means because, like you said, it's predominantly coming from one side, they predominantly get banned.
Yeah.
And we're speaking hypothetically because I don't know the numbers, but for the sake, it's again, I think it's a good point. It's something I hadn't realized. There is going to be a distinction between the individual's identity and the ideas. The ideas don't have an identity.
Right. So are you agreeing that you asserting that Twitter claims they can ban people on the basis of protected classes was not an accurate reading?
I think you're correct, but I do want to clarify. I think what we're actually seeing is that there are certain ideas associated with identity politics.
Yes.
And that Twitter has the ability to remove ideas around certain groups that are specific to that group. For instance,
I agree.